Have you ever been in a place so low that it felt like the ground was giving way beneath you? Like no matter what you tried, everything just collapsed? Bills stacking up, hope slipping through your fingers, and the only thing left holding you together is a thin thread of faith. I remember that season of my life vividly. I had nothing left. No job, no money, no plan. My marriage had crumbled, and with it so did my sense of stability. I was staring at eviction. I was staring at an empty bank account. And I was staring at a future that didn't seem to have a door out. It wasn't just that I was broke. It was that I was broken. I could barely get out of bed. I'd sit in the quiet of my room, feeling like the walls were pressing in, asking God why my life had turned into this storm. There are moments when you look at yourself and say, "How did I get here?" And for me, that was one of those moments. But in the middle of that despair, in the silence of my car, as I drove down the street, I heard something. A voice that was so clear, so undeniable, it shook me. It wasn't audible, but it was louder than any sound I'd ever heard inside. Go to that apartment complex. Put in an application. I froze. Did I hear that right? An application for a brand new building that looked like it belonged to people with perfect credit and steady jobs. I didn't have either. I didn't even have enough for groceries. All I had was $35 in my name. $35, and that happened to be the exact amount it cost to apply. I thought, this can't be God. This has to be me. Or worse, maybe it's the devil mocking me. Why would God tell me to do something that made absolutely no sense? But the voice came again, clearer, firmer. Go put in the application. I argued. I resisted. My brain raced with logic and excuses. Lord, I don't have a job. My credit is shot. They're not going to accept me. I'm wasting my last $35 for nothing. And yet the pull wouldn't let go. So I drove in, nervous, shaking, embarrassed before I even walked through the doors. And here's where it gets real. I told myself, okay, I'll just tweak the truth. I'll make it sound like I've got a job lined up. I'll smooth it over so I look good on paper. But the moment that thought crossed my mind, the spirit checked me so hard it felt like my chest tightened. Tell the truth. That didn't make sense either. Why tell the truth when the truth was ugly? Why admit that I was broke, unemployed, and about to lose my current apartment? Who in their right mind would approve someone like that? But God wouldn't let me off the hook. Don't lie. Tell the truth. So I sat in that office, looked the leasing agent in the eyes, and poured out my reality. I told her, I don't have a job right now. I'm going through a separation. My credit's not good. It's just me and my daughter. But if you give me this chance, I promise you I will work, I will provide, and I will never miss a rent payment. Do you know how humiliating that felt? How exposed. It felt like peeling back the last layer of dignity I had left. But I obeyed. I signed the application. I handed over my last $35. And I walked out telling God, I did what you asked. I don't understand it, but I did it. Days passed. My anxiety grew heavier. And then the call came. Hi, Letitia. Unfortunately, my heart dropped. I didn't need to hear the rest. I knew what came after that word. We won't be able to approve you at this time. Maybe in 6 months, once you are employed and have worked on your credit, you can try again. 6 months? I didn't even have 6 days before losing my place. I remember sitting on my bed, clutching my phone and sobbing uncontrollably. I had been so sure, so certain God had told me to do this. Why would he set me up like that? And cried until my chest hurt. Confusion, anger, shame, it all poured out. I said, God, I know you told me to do this. Why would you ask me to step out only for me to fall flat on my face? I tried to push forward, to pack up my things, to prepare for what felt like the end. But deep down, I was crushed. My faith felt bruised. And then, just when I thought the story was over, the phone rang again. The same number appeared on my phone screen. My heart pounded, because I knew this was the leasing office, but I also knew what they had already told me. No, so what could this call possibly be about? I wiped my tears, cleared my throat, and answered, bracing myself for another disappointment. Hi, Letitia, the voice said. It was the same woman from before, but this time her tone was different. There was excitement in her words. I said, yes, this is she. She said, I have some good news for you. My body froze. Good news? That phrase felt foreign after so many losses. I almost didn't know how to receive it. She went on, do you remember how I told you we couldn't approve your application? Well, my manager who made that decision is no longer with us. We have a new manager now, and I couldn't get you off my mind. The honesty in your application stuck with me. I shared your story with the new manager, and she told me to call you back. She said you can come in and pick up your keys. Pick up my keys? I couldn't even process it at first. I asked her again, wait, are you saying I said been approved? Yes, she said, her voice almost smiling. You can pick any unit you want, and by the way, your first 3 months of rent will be free. Family. When I tell you I broke down crying on that call, I mean I wept. Not just tears of relief, but tears of awe. Tears of disbelief that God could move in a way that literally shifted people out of positions, just so my blessing could come through. The woman on the other end started crying too. It was like the Spirit of God filled that phone line and turned rejection into rejoicing. And I couldn't help but remember that moment when I sat in the office, tempted to lie, tempted to bend the truth so I'd look more qualified. But God had stopped me. Tell the truth, he said. And because I obeyed, the very thing I thought would disqualify me became the reason I was chosen. Let me pause here for a second, because there's a lesson in this. Sometimes what you think will shut the door is the very thing God uses to open it. Obedience matters, even when it feels humiliating, even when it makes no sense. I picked up those keys. I walked into a brand new apartment complex, tape still on the appliances, paint still fresh on the walls. It wasn't just an apartment. It was a statement from heaven. I see you. I haven't forgotten you. I will provide. And for 3 months, I didn't have to worry about rent. That gave me time to breathe, to think, to find my footing again. But here, pets, where the testimony gets even deeper. One day, before moving into the new place, I was in a store. My mind was racing, because I still didn't have a job. I needed a steady income, and I didn't know how it would come. While standing in one of the aisles, I overheard a woman on the phone, and something about her caught my attention. She spoke with authority. She wasn't just anybody. I could tell she was someone important. Now normally I wouldn't do this, but something inside me pushed me to strike up a conversation after she hung up. So I walked up to her and said, "Excuse me, I don't mean to be nosy, but may I ask what you do?" She smiled and said she was a director at the health department. A big decision maker. She wrote grants. She oversaw programs. She was, in her own words, a big dog. My heart jumped. So I asked boldly, "Are you hiring?" We talked a little bit, and she said, "I'm not hiring at the moment, but I'm to take your information just in case something opens up." I gave her my details, thanked her, and walked away, not knowing what would come of it. Fast forward a few weeks. I'm living in my new apartment, still stunned at the miracle God had worked. And out of the blue, my phone rings again. Guess who it was? That same woman from the store. "Hi Letitia," she said. "I remember you asked me about work. Well, something has come up. Are you still looking for a job?" I couldn't say yes fast enough. She explained it was a temporary position, maybe 6 months at most, but the pay was solid, and it was with the health department. To me, it was a lifeline, so I took it. And here's the kicker. I did so well in that role that she didn't want to lose me. She literally wrote a new position into the grant, tailored specifically for me. A position that normally would have required a degree I didn't have. Think about that. God didn't just give me a roof. He gave me a career door that bypassed requirements I wasn't even qualified for. Why? Because of obedience. Because I trusted him with my last $35. Obedience is better than sacrifice. And what looked like the end became the beginning of a season of favor I'll never forget. I want you to catch this. Everything shifted. Not because I had the resources. Not because I had the connections. Not because I had the credit score. But because I obeyed. That's the power of obedience. It may look small. It may feel foolish. But in God's hands, it becomes the doorway to a miracle. When I stepped into that new apartment, I can't even describe the feeling. For the first time in a long time, I exhaled. I was peeling the tape off brand new appliances. The microwave, the stove, the refrigerator, all untouched. The smell of fresh paint filled the air. It was like stepping into a new chapter, a chapter God himself had written. I remember walking through the rooms with tears in my eyes, touching the walls, whispering prayers of gratitude. God, you did this. Not me. Not my strength. You. And the best part? For those 3 months, I had room to recover, to think, to regroup. And then came the job. The very thing I needed to sustain myself beyond the free rent. God had lined it up so perfectly. Think about the timing. He gave me a place to live, free of charge, and then just when the 3 months would be coming to an end, he opened the door for employment. That's divine coordination. That's not coincidence. That's not luck. That's God's hand at work. And let me be clear, the job wasn't just any job. It was a divine setup. That woman I met in the store didn't just hire me temporarily. She liked me so much that she literally changed the rules to keep me. She wrote me into a grant that created a brand new position designed around my abilities. She made space for me in a place I wasn't technically qualified to be. That's Sep's favor. Sometimes God will place the right people in your path. People who see you. People who believe in you. People who make room for you when the world says you don't qualify. That's the kind of doors obedience opens. Now, I want you to imagine something. What if I had lied on that application? What if I had tried to manipulate my way into that apartment? The woman told me herself. What moved her was my honesty. She couldn't stop thinking about me because of the truth I told. My lie would have disqualified me, but my truth became my key. That's why the Holy Spirit pressed so hard on me. Do not lie. Tell the truth. Because God already knew what he was setting up. He already knew that my honesty would unlock her compassion and eventually open the door. This is why I say obedience doesn't just change your circumstances. It protects your destiny. And I'll be real with you. Obedience isn't easy. It's hard to trust God when the math doesn't add up. It's hard to take your last $35 and spend it on something that looks impossible. It's hard to walk into an office and confess, I don't have it together, when everything in you wants to put on a front. But obedience isn't said about comfort. It's said about trust. It's said about saying, God, I still do it your way even if it makes me look crazy, even if it feels humiliating, even if it empties my pockets, because I trust that you see what I can set. And let me tell you, when you obey God in those tight spaces, that's when the biggest blessings flow. I've learned that obedience often feels like sacrifice at first. You feel the sting of giving up your comfort, your logic, your control. But on the other side of obedience, there's always provision. Always. The Bible says it like this: obedience is better than sacrifice. And I live that truth. Because what started with $35 and a broken heart turned into a brand new home, a free 3 months of rent, a career I wasn't qualified for, and a testimony that I'm still sharing today. And here's the part that humbles me most. God didn't just provide for me. He restored my confidence, my faith, and my hope. He reminded me that he sees me, even in my darkest valleys. Now I know some of you watching this might be right in the middle of your valley. You're staring at bills you can't pay. You're wondering how you'll make it through the month. Maybe you're going through a separation or sitting in unemployment, feeling like the walls are closing in. I've been there. I know that pain. But here's what I want you to take from my story. Even in that dark place, God is speaking. It may not make sense. It may feel like the instruction is the opposite of logic. But if it's him, obey. Step out. Trust. Because obedience positions you for miracles you can't manufacture on your own. When I look back on that season, I realized something powerful. The miracle wasn't just the apartment or the job. The real miracle was how God transformed me in the process. Because let's be honest, I didn't just need a new place to live. I needed hope. I needed to believe again. I needed to know that God still saw me. That my prayers weren't hitting the ceiling and bouncing back down. And that's what obedience did. It didn't just open doors. It revived my faith. See, the enemy wanted me to believe I was finished. That my life was collapsing and there was no way out. That I had failed as a provider, as a parent, as a believer. That I should just accept defeat. But God stepped in and said, not so. I have the final word. And his word came through in ways I couldn't have planned if I tried. Think about the timing again. I was at rock bottom when he told me to go apply. I obeyed. I was rejected. And just when I thought it was over, he flipped the script. The manager who said no was removed, and a new one stepped in who said yes. Do you see it? God literally moved people out of the way to clear a path for me. That's why I always say don't be discouraged when someone says no. Don't be crushed when a door slams in your face. Because sometimes it's not that you're disqualified. It's that God is rearranging the cast. He's replacing the people in position so that the right ones will be there when it's time for your blessing. That's exactly what happened to me. And let me tell you, when God blesses, he doesn't do it halfway. He didn't just give me any apartment. He gave me a brand new one. He didn't just approve me. He gave me 3 months rent-free. He didn't just give me a temporary job. He turned it into a permanent career that bypassed the normal requirements. That's what the Bible means when it says God will do exceedingly, abundantly above all you could ask or think. He doesn't just meet needs, he overwhelms them. But here sets the catch. It all hinged on obedience. And I'll be real with you. The obedience in the moment didn't feel spiritual. It felt risky. It felt humiliating. It felt like I was throwing away my last $35 on a pipe dream. But that's the test of faith, isn't it? To trust God when it doesn't make sense. To obey when logic says it's impossible. And some of you right now are wrestling with that exact thing. God is prompting you to do something. Maybe to sow into someone's life. Maybe to take a step toward a dream. Maybe to walk away from a situation that's draining you. And everything in you is saying, that doesn't add up. That doesn't make sense. I can't afford to do that. I can't risk that. But listen, if it subs God, you can afford not to. Because behind every instruction is a blessing. Behind every act of obedience is a miracle waiting to unfold. I'll never forget what happened after I got settled into that apartment. I was standing in my kitchen one night, looking around at this beautiful place, and it hit me. God trusted me to obey. And because I did, He trusted me with more. That was the beginning of a season of favor I'll never forget. Opportunities started coming that I couldn't explain. Doors opened in ways that made people scratch their heads, and every time something new happened, I could trace it back to that one act of obedience. That moment I took my last $35 and said yes to God. It was like planting a seed that kept multiplying. And isn't that how God works? He takes the little we have, the scraps, the last bit of oil in the jar, the last few loaves and fish, and He multiplies it. He turns not enough into more than enough. He turns desperation into overflow. But He asks for one thing: first obedience. That's why this story isn't just about me. It's about you. It's about anyone listening who feels like they're at the end of their rope. God is whispering instructions even now. It may be to bless someone else. It may be to step out in faith. It may be to do something that feels small, even silly. But if it's Him, do it. Because you don't know what's on the other side of that yes. So here's the truth I learned. When God tells you to move, don't hesitate. Don't bargain. Don't try to recalculate the math in your head. Just obey. Because obedience is more than just following instructions. It sips a declaration of trust. It sips saying, God, I don't understand this, but I believe you do. I can't tell you how many times since that testimony I've seen this same principle show up again and again. Sometimes God asks me to bless someone when I feel like I don't even have enough for myself. Sometimes He nudges me to step into something that feels risky. And every single time, the same pattern repeats. The obedience opens a door that logic could never have opened. That's why I keep sharing this story. Because I know someone watching right now is standing where I once stood. You're broke. You're hurting. You're embarrassed by your circumstances. You're staring at closed doors and wondering if God still hears you. I need you to know, He does. And He's already speaking to you. The question is, will you obey? And I get it. Obedience doesn't always feel spiritual. It feels scary. It feels unreasonable. It feels like taking your last $35 and throwing it into the wind. But here's the thing. God isn't trying to bankrupt you. He's not trying to humiliate you. He's setting you up for a blessing so big, so undeniable, that you'll know it could only have been Him. What are the odds that the very manager who rejected me would be removed, and a new one would arrive who said yes? What are the odds that a random conversation in a store would lead to a job that bypassed requirements I didn't even meet? Those aren't odds. That's God. And He hasn't changed. The same God who did it for me will do it for you. But here's what you can't miss. If I had ignored that voice, if I had held on to my $35, if I had chosen to lie instead of telling the truth, none of this would have happened. The apartment, the job, the career, all of it was tied to one thing: obedience. That's why I'm urging you today. Don't miss your blessing by talking yourself out of obedience. Don't let fear convince you that God's instruction doesn't make sense. His ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. Sometimes the instruction is the opposite of logic, because the blessing is bigger than logic. So if God is prompting you to step out, do it. If He's nudging you to bless someone, even when you feel like you can't, do it. If He's whispering for you to take a step that scares you, take it. Because here's the promise. When you obey, you position yourself for a miracle. And listen, I'm not saying it'll always be easy. There will be tears. There will be moments when you question if you heard right. There will be times when the door slams in your face at first, just like it did for me. But don't give up. Don't walk away. Because God may just be rearranging things in the background, moving people, shifting circumstances, so that when the time is right, the door will swing wide open. And when it does, you will know it was him. I'll never forget the moment I held those keys in my hand. It wasn't just metal. It was a testimony. It was proof that God is faithful, that he rewards obedience, and that he never abandons his children. And I want you to have that same testimony. I want you to be able to look back at this season of your life and say, I didn't understand it, but I obeyed. And because I did, God blew my mind. So if you're listening to this, and you feel that tug in your spirit, that gentle nudge that doesn't make sense, don't ignore it. Step into it. Obey. Because on the other side of that obedience is a blessing you can't even imagine. If you take nothing else from this story, remember this. God is faithful, even when it looks impossible, even when the numbers don't add up, even when you feel like you're out of options. He hasn't forgotten you. He hasn't abandoned you. And right now, he's asking for one thing, your obedience. So trust him, obey him, and watch what he does. Because if he could take my last $35, my broken heart, and my hopeless situation, and turn it into a home, a job, and a future, imagine what he can do for you.